I want to switch now. This is interesting news. Earlier this week, Chairman of Curaleaf, Boris Jordan, tweeted out, quote, "Great news. German draft cannabis legislation to be approved this summer with a January 1 start 2024. A medical market 4 times the size of Florida, which is estimated at 3 billion, a 12 billion opportunity. Best news, removed from narcotics list and allowance of consumption, quote, end quote, social clubs." Hello, this is big to say the least, don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's big, especially the part about removed from narcotics lists. So if they actually do this, to me, that's going to be big news because obviously you have Germany, which is one of the largest country in Europe by GDP. So they're obviously the big player there. And if they're willing to take this off their schedule list, and I assume that to mean deschedule,
Yeah.
then why can't we do it here? I mean, why can't Becerra do it here? Like Matt Gates said, why hasn't it been done already? It obviously clearly doesn't belong on Schedule 1. So, I mean, to have
No.
another big tier 1 nation take that lead and take that step, hopefully it's something that, Secretary Becerra from HHS can look at and say, okay, Germany's doing it. Maybe that gives them weight to, do it themselves. And if it's done here, they'll absolutely be huge for the industry.
Big tweet by Boris Jordan, right, Anthony?
I mean, it was huge. I mean, I'm not going to lie that after I'm rereading it right now, it seems like a best case scenario for Germany. But if Boris is right and that is how it's going to roll out, I mean, the investment thesis that we've been preaching on this show about Curaleaf being diversified into the European market, I mean, that plays out pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
If Curaleaf is smack dab in the middle of something that's potentially 4x the size of the Florida market with a $12 billion run rate, I mean, do the math. If they have 10% of that market, it's going to be a very, very large revenue driver for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Germany rolls that out, that is, or not is, it could be the framework that will be rolled out for nations that want to legalize cannabis. I mean, everything from consumption lounges to removing it from the narcotics list. I mean, it's a check, 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 check. Anything that you would want.
Yeah.
It's great if that does happen.
I
Curaleaf.
think one of my big takeaways too is that if I'm not mistaken, they were only talking about having consumption lounges with the regulations a few months back. So to have a full medical market is definitely a very positive event if they go that route. So I know they scaled back originally; they want to have full recreational, and that got scaled back. And then we were hearing just for a time it would be just be the social lounges. But if we're talking about a medical market like they have in the United States, pre-rec in some of these states, with the consumption lounges and a full schedule, I mean, that would be, a pretty, one or two steps away from the best case scenario, full rec.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be, I wish one thing that we haven't been very good at in the cannabis space is getting our messaging right. Because if you're talking about Germany rolling out a full medical market and they're rolling out consumption social clubs, like you're not going to a social club to consume your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a social club to recreationally use a substance.
Mm-hmm.
By definition. I mean, let's just call a spade here. Like if you're going to legalize it. Don't go on the false pretenses of calling it medical and then also roll out recreational facets of the program as well. I mean, I wish we could just sweepingly legalize cannabis and just let it be.
Yeah.
At this point, because everyone just keeps wants to keep getting fancy with it.
Yeah.
Yes, just to add to that point, Anthony, Pablo Zuanich from Zuanich and Associates came out with a note today, and
Saw that.
just to show you how confusing this is, he's talking about the deschedule versus reschedule issue, and he's actually saying that in his opinion that you can't even reschedule recreational cannabis because it's not a medical product. You can only deschedule that completely, but you can reschedule medical cannabis, right? So
Right.
it's like you have all these confusing classifications that really kind of muddies the water. No one, and there's actually a debate on that topic as it is that yes, you can, you can deschedule both or reschedule both. So it's really like, why not just make it deschedule it completely and just treat it like alcohol. That's the thing that doesn't make sense to me. Treat it like alcohol. It has lower incidence of user disorders, of opioid. Like, it's obviously got medicinal benefits, but it's less toxic than just regular alcohol. So just treat it as such. If you do that, then you're treating both markets equally, you're granting access, and yet it could still be controlled like alcohol.
So a lot of the topics too, like you said, there's a lot going on right now. What are you seeing and hearing as far as, like, where do you think this industry is going to be, let's say, in the next year or so? I know it's tough to look into the crystal ball, but I think people want to see, where is this trending?
I think clearly we're in a consolidation phase. That's not surprising, not unusual. So I think it's good. It's kind of flushing out some poor managers
Mm-hmm.
and poorly run companies. It's also making the ones that made good decisions much stronger. Um, it's also super interesting to note that there's a lot of very small operators that are actually doing quite well, but that kind of gets lost in the mix because we mostly just hear the negative news. When in earnings, people have, company has lost $100 million this quarter,
Yeah.
and it just sounds awful. And these companies are failing, and so and look, I'm in media. If it bleeds, it leads. I admit that maybe I'm part of that. But when we do have positive stories, we jump on it like fresh meat because it's just so rare that we have those. But I think they're actually out there, and I feel like the operators that are making money are just trying to like maintain a low profile. They're all kind of like,
Yeah.
please just don't, we don't want to talk about it. But yeah, we're actually doing pretty good.
So being a media guy, I got to ask the question, what are the companies, as much as they're trying to keep a low profile, when you say some of the smaller companies that are doing well fundamentally, are there certain companies that you pay attention to that you like the way they're operating?
Yeah, I would say some of these are like single state operators.
Yep.
I think some of them are craft
Yep.
cultivators that can pivot really quickly if because they don't have a large operation, if they have a mold situation or something that happens. It's not this 20,000 square foot facility. It's just a small operation, so they just chuck it, go to the next room.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can also adapt to what people want in that particular market pretty quickly. They can grow something else really quickly. But yeah, I've seen several of the private single state operators where maybe they have 3 stores, 10 stores. They're just a small organization, but because they're small, they keep it lean. They make good decisions. They're actually doing okay.
Yeah, well, you think about it, who's one of the best companies in the industry when it first got Trulieve, who's focused on one state, and I know as far as branching out into other states, it's tough. Scaling up is definitely hard and challenging for sure, but I think the biggest thing that I've learned from covering this industry, and you could probably echo this, is just way too fast. It was quantity versus quality, but now here we are in 2023, and it's just like, you've got to trim down the amount of states that you're operating in. You've got to turn a profit. And most importantly, you got to provide product that's good. And I find simple things like that seems pretty simple are often overlooked in this industry, which is why a lot of people have exited stage left.
Yeah, I think look, I remember 1819 when acreage
Yeah.
was high capital or something like that
Yeah.
before they were
Yeah.
acreage. And they were like, we're going to be in every state. We're going to, we're in the most states. And they were bragging about how they were in the most states. And then they started to realize, well, okay, so that's great. We've got a Wyoming license. And I can't remember if it was Wyoming or Montana or something like that. Well, in these states out west, it was very limited market. And so, as you noted, each state you kind of got it set up a whole operation from
Yeah.
scratch. So you're setting up this whole operation from scratch to be in a state that's got 3 stores. Does that make sense? Not really. You're not making
I
any
don't think a
money.
lot of people really understood the story either. Like, not just
Yeah.
saying that in particular, but the overall industry as a whole. We're looking at a
Yeah.
casino, like, what is the next 777 gonna land, which happened almost every day once a press release came out.
And that works for somebody like, say, the Gap, where you certainly have money losing stores, but you're on every corner or something like
Yeah.
that. So it makes sense in some ways, but in cannabis, it did not
No.
make sense. And so a lot of those companies that were bragging about, and I'm not meaning to throw shade at Acreage, I'm just using them as an example. But they scaled back and started to focus on either limited license states or just states where the numbers worked a little better.
Yeah.
And then I think beyond that, you had a lot of companies that just got into too much debt.
Way too much.
And these debt payments were just overwhelming.
Which are coming due,
And
which is going to be.
yeah.
All right, let's switch now to psychedelics. And I know this announcement is grabbing a lot of people's attention, and I see some people rolling their eyes. But Cybin recently announced a public offering of 24.26 million units, which were priced at a discount to the market. The units being offered also include warrants to acquire common shares at 40 cents for 5 full years. Ben, start with you, buddy. If you're a shareholder, what's your thoughts on this?
Quick correction to start. I'm actually not a shareholder currently of Cybin.
If you were a shareholder, though, how would you interpret this this announcement?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I can understand the need for financing. Obviously, this is biotech. They're gonna. This isn't going to be the last raise that Cybin conducts. There's going to be a few more down the pike for sure, because they're only in phase 2 right now, and the phase 2's actually they're not even through that yet. Now, the deal itself, we're talking like a 15% discount to market.
Yeah.
The shares trade at 40 cents US the previous day. They're priced at 34, and then you got the full warrant at 40 cents basically for 5 years. So if I'm a shareholder, I'm not particularly loving this particular deal. It's not that it's not the fact that they had to raise, that's expected, but it's I wouldn't call this exactly shareholder friendly, because anybody who bought into this deal is basically getting a full warrant at the price that it closed at the day before.
Yeah.
And then you have, the pretty steep discount to its trading price the day before as well. So I'm not, too excited about this deal. I understand why it happened. Now, it's worth noting that they did cancel the purchase share agreement with Lincoln Park Capital, and that was the potential to issue up to $30 million of common shares to them. So they are canceling a previous existing financing. So net, it kind of equals out a little bit. But in terms of the pricing, not the biggest fan, but you got to do what you got to do to raise capital.
What are you doing with $8 million though? This is drug development. Like, what are you doing with $8 million? I have no idea what that is.
I mean, but they're at the market program though, still running, isn't it? Like that's still alive and well.
Ben, do you know that?
I would have to check on that. I'm not sure if that was in the context of Lincoln Park Capital, which is essentially kind of the same thing. But I would have to check. But the deal itself, with the full warrant, it has the potential to raise up to $16.5 million.
Okay.
But so it's a little bit more than say the headline number. But the share price would have to get significantly above 40 cents for it to vest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, let's just call it how it is. It's not shareholder friendly.
No.
If I was a regular equity holder, I'd be kind of pissed, especially with the program that they just had open. But at the same time, like the only thing I can think of is that they needed to basically give their banking buddies a kickback. Something's coming, and then fill the coffers with some cash. Let them get the preferred equity at a discount to market. Clip the warrant, and some kind of catalyst happens, and then they're going to come back in and finance it on the other way around.
What do you mean by something's coming?
I mean,
fine. Yeah.
Canner and the other bank that's involved, I forget the name of the other bank, but whoever the guys that are involved, I mean, they're not dumb. They're not just throwing $8.5 million like pissing into the wind. They're doing it to make money. So I mean, at the same time, like,
so walk our audience through, because you have this background better than anyone. But how do they make money in this particular situation based off this deal? How would it all work?
There's a lot of presumptions that has to go into that with the financial engineering, but I mean, you can make scenarios out to where you're clipping cash or selling the stock and then making the money on the warrants, and you can get into delta hedging, and it's a completely different. It gets pretty complex, as far as the financial engineering goes. But I mean, this is a very, very savory financing for the
Yeah.
banks that are involved. It's nice. It'd be nice to be partaking in it. Like I said, if I was a common shareholder, I'd be pissed to see this coming out. And I think the market said that itself. I mean, I think the stock was down 28%
Yeah.
when we first noticed the headline this morning.
Yeah.
So it's not very well received by the market.
Were you guys surprised by this announcement at all? I guess you can never be surprised in this industry, right?
I wasn't surprised because of the existing agreement with Lincoln Park Financial. I was at the understanding that at the market program was just being filled up, and they were buying as needed. Maybe things changed, but Cantor and a couple other banks came into the rescue to fill it up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's also possible that maybe this financing was done in lieu of the Lincoln Park Financial for whatever reason. They decide that that's not the avenue that they want to go, and that they want to cancel it. And this is sort of a substitution, at least for part of the funds, for that deal, right? So there are a lot of things that investors don't necessarily know that are not put in the press release, and I'd be careful not to make too many assumptions based on just the information that you have, because there's a lot of things happening under the hood that we don't know about.
Which is why we're here. So Doug, if you're watching this, we'd love to have you on to talk about the financing and get this get this streamlined and get the messaging right, because Ben is right. We are making assumptions here, and I'm sure there's a lot of nuance to the deal.
All right. One of the panel events when I was there was when Peyton Nyquist spoke with Rick Doblin. Really good panel. And they asked how many doctors were in the crowd. I think 90% were. But this was a very controversial statement from Rick Doblin, where he believed that a lot of therapists need to have psychedelic experiences. Do you agree with that?
I do. I stand with him on that, because it's really hard to, guide somebody in any way other than just, making sure they're safe if you don't have the experience yourself.
Okay.
And so if you have the experience, you're going to understand what they're going through. You're going to understand the language. When you help them to integrate it into their life, you're going to be really effective. And I think anybody who's being a guide, or in my case, a psychedelic concierge, and I'm starting to train people to be a psychedelic concierge, and I'm also insisting you have to have the experience with any compound that you're going to recommend, because you can't really help people if you have it. And I'll just make the final point here is that if you are a guide or a psychedelic concierge and you've done, LSD and MDMA and psilocybin and 5-MeO-DMT, but you've never done ketamine, you're not going to be able to help somebody who's going through that journey and the integration, because the language, the experience, it's completely different. So I think Rick is right here. We have to have people that try these. And I know that's one of the bottlenecks for MAPS so far with their training of psychedelic assisted therapists, in order to get those people to be able to watch a few sessions before they do it themselves. There's not that many taking place. So they've got to get these people into the room where their studies going.
Because I would think the growth for getting enough therapists, that will delay things. How do you get people to, I guess, flip the switch? And I guess, is it all based on data?
I think they have to have that direct experience, or at least watch that direct experience for the psychedelic assisted therapy that MAPS is asking people to do. There's so much happening right now. I mean, you've got Health and Human Services looking into this. I saw something the other day where they were asking in front of Congress, the head of the DEA, about rescheduling, descheduling psychedelic medicine. And even though they weren't, giving any very specific things, they were saying, well, look, Health and Human Services has gotten the mandate from the Biden administration that we need to have, protocols in place in the next 24 months. So that's what we're going to do. And, that person who runs the DEA, they weren't willing to say right now, yes, this has incredible value and we're going to do it as fast as we can. That's what the Congress people were pushing. But I think, to that point, we need a little bit of help here from the government. We got to get some breakthrough status here on psilocybin, MDMA, and allow people to access those in the same way that they're accessing ketamine right now off label. Because if you're a doctor and you've had a psilocybin microdose experience and you could help people to get on microdoses, you could literally save their lives. And that microdosing is probably one of the most powerful things that I realized coming out of psychedelic science. I met the Moms on Mushrooms group who are doing a lot of activity in Colorado and everywhere else. And I saw them and I spoke to them and I realized, wow, this is where it's really happening. Forget about the companies in the industry, forget about what's happening on, in the labs and things like that. What's happening on the ground is these mothers in middle America are getting access to psilocybin microdoses. They're taking them. They're having a great effect. It's benefiting them. It's lowering their PTSD, giving them energy, taking away trauma, and it's a very low dose. So the moms are feeling better, and then they're starting to give them to the other moms in the community, and it's spreading like wildfire through middle America. And so even if nothing happens with legislation or science, the moms who are microdosing are the most important people, because the moms make the medical decisions for their husbands,
100%.
for the kids, the whole family. So
Yeah.
if we just target those moms with microdoses, that's all we have to do, Shad, and we could literally clear up this whole mental health addiction situation in the next couple of years.
Hey everyone, so how are you surviving these tough market conditions right now? Are there any emerging industries that you want us to cover? Any guests that you want us to interview? Then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to source out. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like and notification bell, and as usual, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.